Hello, my art friends. This is Cindy Gromholtz again. Just had a little class last night and yesterday, and I wanted to show you how this works. All these components came from a collage pack that Shawn Petite has. You can go watch her on YouTube. She still has a video on how she does this. This was the very first one I did in 2017 when I first found her, and it's just in my book, and I've redone that quite a few times now because I really love it, and it's fun that you can sort of personalize it and make the birds, kind of how your family is, whatever that is. And I love this saying. It says, "We are not perfect. We struggle. We are broken and blended. We are learning to love. We are finding the good. We are covered by grace. We are family." I'm divorced and remarried, and been married a long time to my husband, and I have 2 children from my first marriage and 2 children from my marriage with my husband. And so that saying is pretty perfect for us, and I'm sure it's a lot of people for lots of reasons. And then there's all our children's spouses, and all this blending. It's a wonderful thing. So one of the things on this that I like to do instead of cutting everything is to tear it, and it takes a little longer, but it's not difficult. You just fold your paper in half. I mean, I'm sure you've all done this in grade school. You fold it in half and kind of crease it, and then fold it in half again. And give it another good crease. And you can usually tear it pretty well. I don't mind if it's not perfect because it doesn't really matter on this, hardly anything. On this little piece, we're going to be tearing this down to a certain size so it fits a certain area. But to start with, we just kind of get it down a little bit so that it's workable. Now the surface I'm working on is, it's just a shelf that I've cut. Like you would buy at Lowe's or something like that. It's kind of plasticky on the coating. So there's a little concern that your paint would just come straight off. So for this project, I want to decoupage down quite a bit of paper almost everywhere. It doesn't have to be exactly solid, but it looks pretty funny at one point when you're just filling in before you start painting. So with this type of mixed media art, you just kind of have to, be a little patient and trust that it's going to come out and it's going to be cute. And if you try this, I think you can still order this package from Shawn Petite. And I think you can still watch her video on it also, how she did it. And it's a little different than mine. She uses a few different things than I use. I'm not very good at, I tried the charcoal pencil type thing, and I'm just not that good at that. I'm not very good at shading and things like that. So I do more of this watered down gray or sometimes black paint to give myself a little shadow for things, and it helps your focal point pop out. So that gives you a couple options to try. And the charcoal pencil thing is really cool. So I'd encourage you, if you like this, to go watch her video, and I would try it out how she did it first. Those pencils aren't too expensive. I think they're a couple dollars to buy at Hobby Lobby, or I'm not sure if Michael's has them, but they're not too expensive. They do give you a nice effect. I don't like having to seal things, so I don't really use pastels and the charcoal pencils and things. I guess I'm lazy that way. So it's something you can decide on for yourself. So how I'm going to start is just decoupaging. I do want to take a quick look at my camera and make sure that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm sorry, but just 1 second. Bear with me. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I'm still working on getting a different camera angle, and it's kind of a process learning to do all these different things. So you have to kind of work forward as you can. You know, I can't learn everything at once, certainly. So please excuse my disgusting decoupage bottles. I reuse these, so I wash them out and reuse them, and they get pretty unattractive. So here's the first thing we're going to do. Let's see, let me show you the original again, or well, my original. So you can see in this that there's this main piece, and then there's these two little pieces here, and then there's a little piece right here. And then here's the big family across the bottom. So I need to work on this component to make this work out. And this is how I figured out to do that I thought worked well for me. So this is the second part of this page. I don't know if you remember, I just ripped it in half. So what I'm going to do is fold this in about 1/3 and do the same thing. And I kind of wanted, I can't remember if she did this, but I kind of want them to look like they're tabs, like on a file folder, I guess you'd say. That type of a tab, where you have kind of a rounded top. Now the bottom's not going to really show, so this is sort of what I did, is I just laid it down and I scooched it down a little below this, so there's a definite distinction that this is a different thing. And then I just took this and I just cut a little rounded type thing. And I know I'm not going to need this, so I'm going to tear this off right below where it says addition here. And that fits pretty well. And I'm going to set that to the side because I'm probably going to need it. Now for the other side, I need to do the same thing. I need to use all this paper because this board is a little larger than my book. So I had to reconfigure it a little bit, and I also add this funny looking piece of paper in. But once you paint it, it doesn't really matter. I have actually several here in different stages. So maybe I can show that to you so that you can see what I'm talking about. But just a second, let me get this going first. So same thing with this. It's got this little number 7 for the page number. I kind of want to keep that, so I'm just going to cut this little rounded thing. Same thing. I'm going to, you want the look of it being almost like 2 full pages here. You know, like there's a whole page underneath this, which there isn't, but oh, you know, we have to do that sometimes with wrapping paper and on presents and things. You know how we have, once in a while you don't have enough and you have to kind of make a funny thing. So that's what this is going to be doing. Now here is, this is what it'll look like once I lay it down, all the papers. See how it has this little, and it's got this funny looking piece of paper here, because if I didn't put paper on this board, I don't think the paint would stick. And I didn't want it to be all text. I usually don't even have my text so you can read it. I like it more abstractly so that it doesn't draw your focal point into that. I want it to draw into what I really consider the focal point, which is the birds. So this isn't quite finished either, but here's another, you know, more finished. So you can see the paint blends it all together and it works out just fine. So I've done this so many times recently that I think you'll get the idea as you're watching it. So I'm just gonna pull these off, and I just turn this over. I like to use an old credit card or gift card or you know, something like that to lay down my decoupage, especially on this type of a wood that's got this plasticky coating, because I feel like it gives you it does give you a really nice thin layer of decoupage or matte medium, whatever you're using, and that allows it to dry sooner. I use Sharpies, black Sharpies, on my at the very end of my project quite a lot. So you will ruin your pens if your decoupage isn't dry, and so it's important to have these thin layers because it really won't be dry for 24 hours all the way through. So if you can wait 24 hours, that is the best thing to do, but we can't always wait that long. So I've talked about this a little bit before. The most important thing with laying down decoupage is you get a fair amount in the middle, because you cannot get back to that middle section. You can get back to the sides, but not the middle. And then I kind of lay this down and I sort of guesstimate where this is going to go, because to fit on the board about right. It's about right there is pretty good. I want to leave some room at the top so that you can fill in. Well, how I did it is I did this little thing where I say EST, you know, like established, and the year I got married, 1983. So I want to leave room for that. Oops. So you're always pulling the decoupage out and away so that it can dry, because it's really surprising how much you have underneath that you don't really realize how much extra you put down. You have to put a certain amount down or nothing will stick, of course. So we almost always put extra down. So it's always surprising when you smooth this out how much comes out from the bottom. So this little piece is just going to go pretty much about there. Same thing as before. We just lay it down. Now I have a pretty big wrinkle here, but wrinkles don't bother me. When paper gets wet, it wrinkles. It gets little bubbles. Sometimes they come out as it dries. Sometimes they don't. But I'm okay with that because I like the imperfectness of it. I don't care if it's perfect or not. So this little piece that I tore, that's going to go right here. So that is basically, you know, if you had a regular board, you wouldn't have to do all this other paper stuff. But because I have this slick surface board, I've pretty much got to do it. Or I don't really know, but I'm afraid my paint would just peel off, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to lay this piece down. I'll cut that off about there. So I'm just going to lay that down. Like I said, it doesn't have to be exactly covered everywhere, because some of this showing I think will still be fine. I've done enough of these now that I have a fairly good idea about it. So this is the piece of paper that went below this. Or maybe it was no, it was below this. So I'm going to tear sort of a narrow piece off here real loosely. And I'm going to put that on this little area. fits pretty good. And then I'm just going to kind of rip this into a 2/3, 1/3 part. And I'm going to put the smaller piece up here, and I'm going to turn it to the side. I don't really, like I said, I don't really like to be able to read usually. I do like how this looks though, because it's such a neat piece of paper. So I do like that. But most of the time I will turn my book page or anything with words on it. This one I'm going to turn upside down. And I want this 7 to still show, so I'm just going to tear a little bit of that off so that's not in the way of that. There we go. If you were real particular, you could have put this piece under this piece. I'm okay with it that way. Oh, the other little thing is, want to have another thing that looks like a little tab on a file folder. I want to round both ends to get that look a little bit. And that's going to be right here. And this is where you would write, if you're doing this like I did, you'd write your name here. So I have all these other areas, right, that have, you know, need to be filled in. So since this is wet right now, I think I will utilize a little of this page stuff I have. It's all right to have it hanging off the edge. I'll either tear it or I might just glue it onto the other side. But I do want to pretty much have this tab showing as a tab. And once I go around it with the black Sharpie, that helps for it to stand out more too. So I will probably just put a little decoupage on this and glue it down on the edge here. That's fine. So I've got this piece of paper which is too wide, so I'm just gonna hopefully rip it about the right width, length, all that kind of thing. Let's see here how it works. Oh, I kind of like that straight edge though, so well, no, I'm gonna do it this way. That's how much I don't like being able to read it. I don't want my attention taken away from the birds. That's where I want my attention to go. The birds of this and this and this. That's where I want my attention to go to, my focal points to be. So I think I'll just put this little piece right in here. Maybe I'll turn that way. Like I said, it doesn't have to have every, you know, I've got little crevices here. That's okay. The paint will kind of roll around, and this is too big though. It's just too big of a spot to be left. And I think I'll cut this and see if I can make this work. If you didn't have enough paper, you know, you could use newspaper, you could use an ad, you could use just book page out of an old dictionary or something like that. There's a lot of things that you can have access to, and they're not expensive or difficult to get, so you don't have to worry about that too much. You could probably just go on your printer and print off some funny thing, or you could take a blank piece of paper and write some stuff on it and copy it on the printer so it doesn't bleed when you put decoupage or paint on it. And then I've got this area up here. Now this is gonna look really strange at first, but I want to keep that pretty much just white because I want to be able to put that established and the date there. So I want that to not really have a lot of text on it, because that'll make it a little harder to be able to write your own story on. And I think that's important. So we I'm just going to put white. This is just part of what was left over, and it's just the same thing. It's just copy paper. Sean has these collages, and you can buy them and you can print them on your own printer. So that's a really nice thing. And you can play with it till you get it just how you want it. Not very much money. So I'm just going to put a few more of these down. Like I said, you don't have to cover everything. And I don't really know if the paper would come off. I just have a feeling it would because it's so slick. I guess you could maybe sand it. I'm not very into doing that much work, I guess. Maybe I'm lazy. But anyway, you get the idea. Now, the other fun thing about doing this type of art is that regular acrylic paint, you don't have to dry this before that. You can, but you don't have to. It mixes with it very well. So let's get started on that. I have to warn you, this could end up being a two-part just because I'm not sure I can get done in time. Oh, my little bottle isn't working. What is... Okay, so this is Golden Brand, and it's, I think you say it, quinacridone nickel azo gold. It's such a beautiful color. Now these paints are a little more expensive than these paints, but I have a few of them, and I just buy one every so often. I have to go to my specialty art store. I can't get them at Michael's, or, oh, Michael's does have a few of these now. I don't think Hobby Lobby has any, but it is, you'll see how far it goes, and you don't need very much. This is a very liquid paint too, this particular one. Not all of them are the Golden Brands. In fact, some of them are heavy body, and they have some beautiful finishes. There's just a whole lot of different things, and like I said, it is really just a beautiful, beautiful color. Now, right now, it doesn't look that beautiful to you, maybe. But this is how we get the beautiful reds and yellow, and we end up kind of with even a rust color. So I just have a cheap foam brush. I like to get these at the hardware store. They're better than the ones at like Michael's. The ones at Michael's tend to just have this slide right off. I think they might be cheaper too, honestly, but you can check out your own stores and see. So I have a lot of water in this brush. Can you see what happens when you add that? It's just, oh, it's so gorgeous. And I like to do this thing that I call it just kind of blobbing it on. So, you know, the first thing you do, you want to cover up that, especially this piece of paper, so white, didn't really go with anything. So I kind of just run this all along. I try to get different strengths of this paint going, some almost full strength and some of it very watered down, and you can see how difficult I did that one. You know, you don't have to worry about some of it. You're just getting the base colors on, and this already has a bit of yellow in it, and I don't want to go into this, and I don't really want to go over this typed lettering here because it covers it up, and it's a little hard to read, but I might want a little in here. Once again, like I said, this blobby, I like this little blobby looking thing, and I use my fingers to move it around some because that's a different look also. And so it's kind of just whatever you want to do, and it all works out really well. Now I have to do two of these, so I'm gonna set that aside, and I'm gonna bring this one in that I haven't really done this gold to. When I was teaching the class, I did add the blue to it, but so I got plenty of paint here, I think, to just do what I need to do here. And I'm just gonna run this around, and if I need to, I can certainly put a little bit more on. Maybe I just need to get what's on the tip of this even to, well, not much there, so open this up again a little bit and just add a little tiny bit of it. Well, if I get it open enough, I guess. There we go. So we'll just add a little more so we get that real orangey. And it's really interesting how this orangey yellow thing mixes with this blue color paint. You might not think that would work, but it's how I get the greens. And I'll just do that right now. So I'm just going to put a little bit on my lid here. And it doesn't take very much. So I'm going to mix, I'm not sure you can see that. Well, maybe I'll put it here and you can see it. So pretty watery. I'll mix a little of that blue with it, and look at this incredible, you get sort of a rusty looking color, and you get a green, which is what I'm actually going for right now, is sort of a greenish color that I'm going to kind of add into here, little bits. And like I said, I like this puddling thing quite a lot. I like it how it looks when it dries. It's just really different. And this one, like I said, it already had the, I already added some of the blue. So one thing you can do is maybe you get too much here, you can dab it off. You also can use a piece of paper to dab things off, and you get a really different look with that. And when it dries, it has a different layered look to it. So I think I'll just put this to the side now. And I'm going to bring this one back in and add the green into it. Hopefully there's enough, but I can always mix them. Maybe I need a smidgy more of the, might have to do a little more mix here. Let's see. There we go. So we'll just get some of this green going. You know, every piece of art comes out a little differently. If you want to make it exactly the same, you can try for that. And I think sometimes you can achieve something pretty close. Other times you can't. And it's all good. It doesn't have to look exactly the same as any other one. So that's what I have to say about that. Now I do need this tab. I need to put some of the solid blue on, and I need to add that in a couple little areas to just spread that color around a little bit. I can see I'm going to have to get some more of that out a little bit, not much. But I do think I'm going to, unfortunately, since I'm filming this, I don't really want to run the heat gun. It's awfully noisy. I just realized that I put paint on, should have done that one first. I might have to stop this and run the dryer, the heat, this little gizmo for a minute. I don't know if it'd be too noisy, I guess. Anyway, maybe I can get this part done. You could certainly use a brush for this. Like I said, I like a very rustic look to things. It's really rare that I want it to look really exact. If I were doing a face or something, I would like it to look more exact a lot of times, but I'm not very good at faces. I have to use stamps and things like that to get that done. So let's see here. I wish I knew how noisy that would be. This other one is a little drier. Maybe I could shift back to it and maybe we can get this one dry. I've already cut out my birds, so I know I have those. Another fun thing you can do is you can get things to run a little bit. And That gives you a different look too. I'm gonna have to dry this a little bit because I still need to do my gray layer. And I don't want that to mix with the yellow. It just won't work out. So I'm gonna try this. I apologize if it's too noisy, and I guess it'll be a learning experience for me. Just mute your volume if it's too loud. I am sorry if it's too loud. So I'll try to get this done real quickly and move on to the next part. Well, that's not so bad. I don't know how it sounds to you, but it's not so bad. Well, like I said, I love this pooling, so I don't want to lose that when I dry. I normally would just let it sit and dry because you get the best effect of the pooling that way. But, like I said, since we're doing a video, kind of have to go with the flow of that. And I just hope that's not super loud for you. Hopefully it won't take too long. You must all think I'm obsessed with Shawn Petite, and I kind of am. I love her art. I love her sentiments. She often will talk after her videos, and I spoke on the phone with her one time, and I really do think she's just this very special lady. And, well, I hope I can meet her someday. I really do. If I ever go to where she lives, I'm going to try to meet her. I don't know. I hope she won't think I'm weird or something. But I think if you watch some of her videos, you know, you can go way back. This one is pretty far back in her video. Because I did this first in 2017 when I first found her. So I believe she goes back further than that. And what I did is I liked her so much, her process and everything, that I went back and I just watched every video from the very beginning. And I know a lot of you don't have enough time to do that. This is the way I wind down in the evening before I go to bed, is I watch YouTube. I know that sounds silly, but I can just lay in bed and kind of watch it, and it's restful to me. I've talked before about how art is almost meditative to me and peaceful, and so I don't know if that's why it works for me. I'm not really sure. But maybe you could pick and choose a few to watch if you like this one, because I would tell you to watch her hydrangea one that's also fairly close to where this one is. And it actually is my very favorite art piece I've ever done. And it's just beautiful. I love it. All right, so now I'm going to use a little bit of very watered down gray paint, and I'm even going to water it down more, because all I'm doing with this is making what I call a wash. And I'm going to do some shading with it, because as I said before, I'm not really, I tried the charcoal pencil and I'm really not very good at it. So this is so rudimentary. You can see that's really not attractive, but then you get your finger a little wet and you sort of just smear it out a little bit so that it's not quite so, you don't really want rectangles and circles and things like that in this type of art. You want to keep things looking organic, I guess maybe is the word. But you do want to highlight all these cool things. So you can also get more paint on your brush and do it that way. You just don't want some straight line like to look like what I just did, because it's not very attractive. if you start that way, you know, I had to start too. You know, I've learned a lot of things, but I had to start one day. And as you learn things, you change how you do things. This still works for me. If you don't like it, you know, try something a little different. And, you know, you might really love the charcoal pencil thing. And Sean is just a wonderful teacher on that. I just can't seem to get it. So it's not on her, it's on me. But you have to find what works for you. I also love to work with ultra fine and fine Sharpies almost every class, and I will be using it on this too. And I also use a very fine white pen for the white little dot in the eyes of the bird. And that's a little bit of a struggle too, because I don't quite know what a bird's eye really looks like close up. So I'm just sort of guesstimating, and you know, it came out all right and I liked it, so that's just what I went with. So here I want a little bigger, more exaggerated. I even want to take some of this gray out into this area a little. You can tell I am not being very perfect whatsoever. It's just very loose, and at the end it will help these elements stand out a little bit. And not much. It's not in your face. It's just your eye notices it a little bit and it's pleasing to it. But like I said, you can see I'm not very, it's just a very loose thing. And I even want to do, this is even a little more, almost like, you know, get some drops. But I wanted some bigger ones, so I kind of just did this, like you can imagine you spilled your paint and it just dried. You said, oh no, I've ruined my piece. But then you go back and it's just dried and you've got these cool little marks. Same thing, you usually don't want even things. You want odd numbers, all that kind of thing. Now you got to be careful up in here or you're going to not have that clearness you need to do your writing if you want it writing. And you can use rubber stamps too. In fact, this is a rubber stamp. I just had already done it. Another thing is you twist your, let's see, if you twist your paintbrush, you can get a pretty fine tip on it. And these are just kids, really cheap kids paintbrushes I use for classes. So it's not perfect. It's not, maybe you can't stand how thick that is even. But that's just a base, and I'm going to go back over that with my ultra fine black Sharpie, and I think it'll work out pretty well. So I like that. And I'm just going to dry this again. And again, I hope that this is not too loud and doesn't take very long. I don't think it will. But let's just get started on it. I guess while I'm doing this, I'll mention that I'd really appreciate you to help me grow my page, my channel, my YouTube channel. I also am on Facebook. I have a Facebook page under my name, Cindy Kromholtz, that you can look at classes. I'm considering doing sort of some online classes that you could follow along with. Of course, I wouldn't be using Shawn Petite's artwork because this is hers, and I give full credit to her on this. The birds are hers. This whole packet is hers, except for maybe this little piece here. I don't know where I got that from. But I can do other things, and if you give me a thumbs up and subscribe, that's really helpful. And I really love to see your comments, and I don't mind if it's some constructive criticism, because this YouTube thing is really new to me, and if you think there's something I could do that would be better for your watching, or if there's something you'd like me to create, I do all kinds of different mixed media projects, and I mean all kinds. Like this is, sorry about that. This is my business card holder, and it was just a book that I got at a thrift store, and this is not a difficult project. Any of you could do it. I put a little cute key on it, and if I do a show, or when ladies come over for classes that are new, I have my business cards in here and they can take one. So I do all kinds of different projects. I love to do all kinds of things. All right, I'm going to decoupage the birds on now. So I always suggest that you, like I said before, you kind of dry lay things just so you get a feel for where they're going to go. And this one is going to go like that. And that gives her room to write her name. And I'm going to draw a branch in across here. I'm going to use this branch, but I'm going to draw the rest of it in, or paint it, I should say. It's not difficult, and I'll share a little tip with you on that. So this looks good. This is what this lady that I'm making this for likes and wants. So I hope she'll like it in the end. But anyway, we're going to take that off. Usually you don't want to leave a lot of pieces that aren't glued down on, because you could get glue on them and they could stick and you couldn't get them up maybe. Now when I'm doing this, I think it's so much easier, especially using the credit card or the gift card thing, to just do a very large swath of a thin layer of decoupage. Because this way you don't have to worry about, oh, did I get this little area? So I know that I had this one sitting about like that. You know, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. Now I'm over a little too far because the beak's off the edge. So I think I'm just going to, see what I mean about you can't hardly lift it up. You got to be very careful. I'm just going to turn that a little bit, and that gets it back on. And this is a good way to do this when you have some fine details. Gets it down a little, and then you take a little of this and you gently go over it. You know, paper can tear, and you don't want it to tear, and you don't want it to peel up, and just all kinds of weird things paper does when it gets wet. So you have to be a little careful with it. But then once it's sat for a minute, you can go a little harder, and if there's extra decoupage under there, you can get it out and pull it away so that it can dry, so that you can maybe do your Sharpie. If you're at home doing this, I just suggest you wait till the next day or longer. It will still be there for you, and that is the best way to do it, so it's totally dry. Because we've got a lot of layers of paper, and even though you dry it with the heat gun and it feels dry, it is wet underneath, and it will be wet for quite a while. I mean, typically you want to go about 24 hours in this thought process. So you have to really think about that. It will ruin your pens is the main reason, and it won't look nice on your writing either. It does not like it if it's wet at all. I'll just say that. So I can't quite remember where I had this, but I do know I had this little bird down in this area, and I clear the way across. So I'm just I'm gonna go with that, and then you could tell this is only a half of a bird here, so I'm just gonna lay the other bird on top of it. And I can still see this really well, and I can imagine how I'm gonna do this branch. Now, if you're not sure how to start with a branch, there's a couple things you could do. You could just take a pencil and you could simply draw a light line and use that as your little guideline. And you start thin, and then you can go back and you can thicken it up like a branch normally would have. you know, they're not thin all the way across, of course. They're thicker at one end. I'm going to imagine that this branch is coming off a tree over here somewhere. And that's how I'm going to approach that. And I'm going to use my little cheapy brush with a little bit of brown paint. And I'm not going to worry that there's some of this yellow, green, blue mix here because that won't matter. It's good to have a variation of the colors actually. Once again, because it's decoupage, you don't need to dry it to start this. So I'm just going to take a little paint and I'm going to kind of start past the foot of the bird, and you kind of make it wiggly. You don't want a straight line. Branches are never straight. And like I said, I'm going to imagine that this is the tree here, so this is going to be sort of a knot or something where this branch maybe would join the tree. So this is a little light, but you just leave that and you'll come back to that. Now I have to turn this to get, you know, so I can kind of get an angle going. And same thing over here. I'm just putting a little brown. I'm not even, you know, this has already got a little brownish color to it. So I just want to tie it all in and make it look like it all went together at some point. I also like to usually draw, we'll see this one already has a little branch coming off it here. So I'm just going to use that. And then if you twist your paintbrush a little bit, you can get a little funny line, which kind of does look like a branch. Once again, that's not quite finished. It's just the beginning. So leave it, move on. So you imagine the branch coming underneath, and this also is a piece of wood. So maybe this had some weirdo branch that was giant right here. So I'm going to just sort of paint on top of that again to tie it in together. And, you know, this is a broken off branch, right? But I have to do something here to connect this all up. So I'm going to imagine that this goes kind of like that. And, you know, you can kind of see how this would be there. Now this little branch, I'm going to go all the way up to his chest here. Or I don't know what to call that. And I'm going to imagine that it goes out this way. So I'm not going to try to draw this big thick thing to start with. I'm just going to pull this out a little bit. And then I'm going to come back here and look at it and make this a little thicker. So maybe this branch narrows down a little bit, right? And ends up this little teensy thing. And again, you just twist your paintbrush or move it a little bit to get this little squiggly thing. You know, branches are kind of funny that way. Well, I'm not going to try to connect this to here at this point. So at this point, by the way, when your paper's, the decoupage is dry enough, if you see kind of a bubble, you can kind of press down on it. A lot of times you can get those to go really flat. Not always. And the more they dry, the more they change. But a lot of times you can get those to go flat. That's one reason I don't worry about them much. I see I need a little more decoupage there, so I'll add some in a minute. But I'm going to imagine the branch over here so that I can tie it in eventually. But I don't have the artistic ability to quite go this way. I've got to go this way. So I'm just going to start again with the feet, and there is a little bit of a branch here that I didn't cut off. So I'm going to use that, and this has a funny little thing here too, so I'm going to kind of use that. And then here's the other part of the foot, right? I don't know if you can see it. It's right there. So I'm going to go past that a little bit. And again, I'm going to kind of just wiggle that down. Now, at this point, there's no other little feet, even though there would be 4 feet from the birds, but they're kind of sitting on top of each other almost. So You don't quite see that, and I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to try to finish up my branch a little bit. And I like it when I get a little bumpy thing like that because that's how branches look. Right here though, this would not probably narrow down and be able to go over to there. So I'm going to thicken this up a little bit more so that it can look cohesive a little bit. You know, if you're a better artist than I am, you know exactly what to do. So I'm just trying to help you out if you're like me and you don't really have an idea of how to draw real things, because I just don't. I don't have the perspective or anything. Now this bird is sitting on a little thorny type branch, so I'm going to use that a little bit too. It's right there. So I'm going to envision that this would come across here and connect up there. So you can see how I just barely put a little bit of paint on. And then this one's legs would be up here, but you know, you can imagine this branch would go up here and then it would come here. And then here we have feathers again, and here's this big fat branch. So I'm going to connect that up right to the kind of, here's the end of that. I'm just going to draw that in, not quite as fat as it, well, maybe I will because of the way the feathers are here, the tail feathers.